November is almost upon us once again, which means for a few people, the month of writing challenges is upon us. Though by the time this video goes live, it will have already begun. That's generally the reason why I don't do any drawing challenges in October, because I always at least attempt the November writing challenges. And I did them back to back one year, and it was the worst. I burned out and didn't want to work on anything else, so I wasn't able to finish at all. November is National Novel Writers Month, and there was a very popular challenge called NaNoWriMo. It started on November 1st every year, and by the end of the month, you had to write at least 50,000 words of a brand new project. It could be something original, or it could be fanfiction, or even your thesis for university. It was up to the author as long as they hit that word limit. There wasn't any prize as far as I remember, but I think I remember there was an opportunity to, if it was an original project, begin rounds of edits to move to publishing. I might be remembering that wrong though, so don't quote me on that. You could either sign up and participate officially or participate unofficially on your own, which is mostly what I did. I only properly signed up one year, but then ended up being too busy that November to actually get anything done. Alas. But last year, the organization that hosted this kind of shot itself in the foot. To my knowledge, it began with allegations against a volunteer moderator, which I won't go too into, but it involved underage authors as well as lots of bullying and racist, homophobic, transphobic, and abusive stuff. Then it got worse when they decided they were going to allow people to use AI to participate. And when they got understandable backlash for it, they doubled down with a very ableist statement about how they want to be inclusive of people who can't write like everyone else. As if there aren't methods disabled people can use to create art or write without AI. Like, hello, speech to text exists. It was just very strange and very bad. Then, with all of that, earlier this year, the organization announced it was going to be closing its doors. Which, honestly, after all of that, was probably a very good decision, because it seems to be increasingly clear that they had no idea how to properly manage everything, considering all the questionable business decisions the current management was making. And I say current because the original founder of NaNoWriMo hasn't been part of it in a while. So with all of that, I had kind of resolved myself to not participating again, especially after their weird AI stance. Which was fine. I mean, I'd done it on my own in November before. It wasn't a big deal, and I could do the challenge in whatever month I wanted if it came down to it. All that is to say, after that implosion, the original founder stepped forward, along with some other former staff members who had left long before this mess all happened, have come together to create Nano 2, which is a very bare-bones version that focuses purely on the writing. They have a firm stance against AI, thank you, and they have no forums, which I also honestly see as a good thing. It was clear that with the original organization, the forums were too vast, and they didn't have enough people to properly monitor everything. And relying on volunteers for such a thing isn't always a good thing. Case in point, everything that happened. Nano 2 simply provides resources and motivation, nothing more. Which is probably how it should have stayed, but that's just my opinion on the matter as an outsider who saw everything go up in smoke. That said, after finding out that Nano 2 was a thing, I felt motivated to actually participate again. I skipped last year because of everything I mentioned earlier, so it was nice to find there were people dedicated to bringing NaNoWriMo back to what it was. So I decided, what the heck, I'll give it a go again this year. I'm still in the process of working on the second part of my Sailor Senshi as Genshin characters video, but I figured I'd take a break and go through some of my NaNoWriMo prep. Maybe it'll be helpful for you too. Granted, November is almost here, so not a lot of planning time, but better late than never, really. But this is also another reason why I tend not to do any October drawing challenges, because October is considered Preptober for those of us who'll be writing during November. Because one of the rules was always that you can't use anything you've previously written ahead of time. Everything has to be fresh. Of course, there were always people that went rogue, so it's not like it was a hard and fast rule, But for me, it did make it more of a challenge to come up with a brand new concept, flesh it out, and then start writing it from scratch. To that end, I'm kind of bending that rule a little this year, sort of. Does it count if I'm completely rewriting the thing with a brand new setting and new characters? I've only finished Nano once, and I think it was still down to the wire. I think I hit 50k 2 or 3 days before the last day of the month. It wasn't perfect by any means, and there was a lot I wanted to fix, but I was proud of myself for reaching that goal. Then I set it aside for several months before I finally went back and wrote the ending, landing it at a solid 80-something thousand words. And now I'm scrapping the whole thing! Sort of. I'm keeping some core plot ideas, but I wanted to turn it into something that was a bit more in line with what I usually write and want to write. So when I start prepping, I usually start with my main characters first. I sit down and start thinking about what kind of characters I want to write. What character dynamics feel the most fun to me? Characters that might serve as an inspiration or who I feel are the closest to what I want to write. Then I start working on the character designs. I look at the inspirations, and then I start working on combining things together and seeing what feels right to me. Sometimes the design heavily resembles the inspiration, and sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on what vibe I'm feeling for that particular character. So for the main characters this time, I decided I wanted to go for a sort of Jinshi and Mao Mao kind of dynamic because I genuinely enjoy their interactions with each other, and it's not one I've tried to tackle before. But I also think it fits the plot I've built, where two characters are kind of forced to work together to accomplish their goal. I haven't decided on any names yet, but for the male lead, my inspirations were Jinshi, number 1 of course, in addition to Wuxian and Lao Jun from The Legend of Hei. I loved Wuxian's himbo moments and the fact that he sucks at cooking and is literally only good at fighting. The way he's kind of spacey at times was very funny to me, and Lao Jun, at least in the manhwa, is somewhat similar. His design definitely leans into Lao Jun's, but I really like the way his hair is drawn in the manhwa, and I knew I wanted the male lead to have long hair. The vibe I settled on for him essentially boils down to a pretty boy who knows he's pretty, is used to people fawning over him, even though it makes him feel kind of awkward. He's a himbo, and he's really only good at fighting. He's bad at doing mundane tasks like cooking or cleaning to the point one has to wonder how he's even made it this far. But at the same time, he is currently the strongest in the kingdom. For the female lead, I looked at Mao Mao, of course, and Qingning from the Legend of Hei prequel manhwa. Mao Mao's grounded nature is such a fun contrast to Jinshi's dramatics, but that's something to get into more when I make an actual video for Apothecary Diaries. So I wanted to keep that down-to-earth nature, and the same way Mao Mao treats Jinshi like any other person, it's the same for our main characters here. From Qingning, I looked at her kindness and bravery, as well as her stubbornness. She always strives to help others, even at the cost of herself. Given where the English translations for the manhwa currently are, oh my god, I am so stressed for her. I need more immediately. But I also really love the way Qingning's hair is drawn, so I wanted to incorporate that into her design. For the female lead, she is a normal village girl who finds her life turned upside down by the plot. She's very capable and takes care of most things around the house since she lives with her grandfather. She's very kind, but very stubborn. But she's also very down to earth. Though she is still plagued by anxieties and insecurities related to the plot, she always tries to think things through logically. She's also very outdoorsy and exceptionally knowledgeable when it comes to the plants around her village. As the two work together, she teaches him the mundane things that he has no idea how to do, while he teaches her how to fight, since she has to learn in order to accomplish her goal. Once I have my main characters ironed out, then I start working on the world and setting. I know for some people the process is flipped, where they start doing the world and setting first before working on the characters. It would probably be a smarter way to work, having the established world and then molding my characters based on that, rather than building the world around the characters, but my process is a chaotic mess no matter what I'm working on, so do as I say, not as I do. Really, just do it in whatever order works for you. For me, I love high fantasy worlds with lush, ancient forests and overgrown ruins. Villages with thatched roofs and grand castles with magical creatures. You know, sword and sorcery. But I also love worlds where there's magic in the mundane. Something like Ancient Magus Bride, where it's a modern world but a secret layer of magic with magical creatures. Those are the kind of worlds that interest me the most, and the ones that appear most frequently in my writing. The original version of this story fell into the latter, and I have another project I'm working on that falls into this category as well. When I decided to start rewriting this idea and started changing the characters, I thought it would be more interesting to put it into the former, to go the whole sword and sorcery route this time. Plus, that way, at least, it keeps these two active projects different enough for me to work on at the same time. Of course, this also comes with deciding how I want the magic system to work and how I want the creatures of the world to look, what kind of fantasy creatures and races to include. I don't have all of that completely ironed out yet, but we'll see the direction my brain ends up taking me. Once I have my characters and world established, then I start figuring out the plot. I used to be what's called a pantser, which essentially means you just wing it. You don't outline the story and just go with the vibes as you write. But then I started noticing that I was forgetting certain things, whether it was a scene I wanted to include or repeating a scene I'd already written a couple chapters ago. So then I started outlining before I got to writing. It can be challenging, but I think of it as a loose guideline. Having certain beats I want to hit helps, and it helps me to keep my thoughts organized. But again, it's a loose guideline. I don't have to follow things exactly. Things can shift as the story progresses, and I can move those beats around based on what feels best. And sometimes it can take me in a completely different direction than what I was planning, but ultimately works better for the overall story. I think it's much better for me as a person with undiagnosed ADHD to keep in mind that the outline isn't a rigid structure and it doesn't have to be. That was the reason I struggled with trying to outline my stories before. The more the story evolved away from the outline I'd written, the more I felt like it was a mess. But once I changed the way I thought about it, the easier it became. Your outline shouldn't be the end-all be-all of the story. Your story is a flexible thing, like water, constantly flowing and changing during the process of writing it. The finished product may be something completely different from what you expected it to be. As mentioned before, I am completely rewriting a previous Nano project, so my plot is kind of loosely determined right now. The things I'm keeping from the previous version is that there's a mysterious, magical artifact that falls into our female lead's hands. But this artifact is also linked to her archaeologist grandfather's sudden and mysterious disappearance. This artifact turns out to be part of a seal holding back the main antagonist. Having this artifact, though, draws the attention of the monstrous creatures working to piece this seal back together in order to free their boss. So staying in her village or any other village along the way for too long would bring danger on them. But it's also the only lead she has to who took her grandfather. It's those circumstances that lead to our main characters working together, because this isn't something our heroine can do on her own. She has no idea how to fight, but it's her grandfather that's missing, so she feels a certain responsibility to be the one to bring him back, so she insists on undertaking this journey. Our male lead is initially reluctant because of this, but eventually relents to the idea of teaching her how to fight as they travel along. Along the way, they'll stop at different places to look for information on their enemy, to track down their base of operations, or to fight when they do encounter the enemy. I haven't completely plotted things out, and I don't want to give too much away because I do plan on trying to publish this story eventually. Of course, this is also subject to change entirely in the process. The only thing set in stone right now is the main characters and the dynamic I want to write in this high fantasy world. Who knows what the story will end up being? Not me! Even though I really should be the one who knows. Eventually. There's also the question of what kind of story arc do you want your story to have? Do you want to follow the standard 3-act structure? Do you want to follow the hero's journey? Or do you want to do something different, like the Kisho Tenketsu style, like Ghibli uses? Personally, I don't think too much about this. I feel like I get stuck when I try to fit my stories into the 3-act structure or the hero's journey. Trying to decide what moments of my story corresponds to what the structure says it should be just gives me a headache. I'd rather just write than think about that kind of thing. If it works for you, though, more power to you. Again, the whole point is to do what works best for you. If applying these structures before you start writing works for you, go with that. If not, just worry about it later. Another thing I like to do is make mood boards and playlists for my projects. Something for the overall vibes of the story, like the world and potential location designs, and then character boards, including their inspirations, their vibes, things they'd like, outfits they might wear within the setting or in a modern AU. Same thing with the playlists, either making one for the overall project or a playlist for the main characters. I tackle those in very different ways, though. For an overall project playlist, I tend to think of it as, if this were an anime or a movie, what would the soundtrack sound like? What kind of music would play during this moment? Can I picture a cool AMV to this song? Whereas for character playlists, that tends to be more so songs that have fitting lyrics to their personality or journey, or a matching vibe, or even just a song I think that character would listen to. Doing that helps me get in the character's head a little more, and then when it comes time to write, I have these playlists to listen to get me immersed in the world I've built. In the end, the best prep is what works for you. This is just the process I follow. What works for me might work for you, and it might not, and that's totally fine. That said, there are many more challenges springing up for the month of November, so you can also find the one that works the best for you. The challenge of 50K within a month just works for me simply because having a deadline keeps me motivated. Or at least keeps the thought in mind that I need to get this done or else. Doing this challenge, though, showed me that I can finish a project. It helped me to just stop overthinking my writing. It allows me to just turn off that part of my brain for a bit and just get words out every day. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to get done. You can perfect it and polish it later. It helped me remember that this is just the rough draft. This is just laying the groundwork and building the skeleton of your story. Hopefully, by the time we hit November 1st, I'll have gotten all of this ironed out. As always, we finish this off with a look at the final piece. I went back in and added some speech bubbles, which I think kind of adds to the hilarity of the scene. Like, this guy has no idea what he's doing. He has no idea how to survive in the wilderness. Of course he's gonna slip and fall in the lake or river, whatever this was. Meanwhile, our heroine watches him in complete disbelief. Like, how has this guy lasted this long? Anyway, I do think I've improved on my backgrounds quite a bit. The more I draw them, the more I seem to like them. At least, compared to what I usually did before. But on the whole, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Now, his hair color might change between now and whenever I start writing. I'm still not completely sold. I feel like the blue just looks too much like Lao Jun, even though Lao Jun's is darker. I don't know. I didn't want to go with purple just because I chose Mao Mao's hair color for our protagonist. And I figured going with Jinchi's purple was a little too on the nose for their dynamic. So, we'll see. Things might change. But on the whole, I am really happy with this. I love how the trees turn out. I love how the forest in the background looks. And I love the expressions. They were so much fun to draw, and I kept laughing to myself while I was recording the speed paint. But that said, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found something helpful for you. If you're participating in a writing challenge next month too, best of luck to you. May we all successfully reach our word counts by the deadline. As always, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you like listening to me ramble. Most of the time I talk about stuff I like, but every now and then I get a more art or process kind of video out, like my Drawing Blank as Genshin series. As always, see you next time.